So, man, as you know, 8:30, we always get to our favorite part of the show. 7:30. 7:30. You know what? They didn't turn the times back on some of these things. I was like, it's 8:30. I'm like, hold up, we still here? I was about to say, we still here? You know, and I'm excited. You know, this is one of those things that, you know, I get excited for because I get to the interviews. And this interview is going to be a pretty dynamic one. I heard so many things about this young lady, you know, and how much of a powerhouse she is and the stuff that she's doing for the community. You know, because, you know, sometimes we like to really get the information and give the information. So before I go into my little spiel, Sizzle, who do we have today?
So we have the beautiful Miss Lynette Medley. She is the founder and CEO of No More Secrets Mind, Body, Spirit, Inc. She earned her bachelor's degree in mental behavior sciences from Drexel University, her master's degree from Widener University in human sexuality. Her personal inspiration and authentic approach to creating safe spaces for all to heal and grow regardless of their past or present experiences is unwavering. She unselfishly gives of her time, energy, and resources on a daily basis to aid those in need of reassurance, all while facing her own personal challenges. Lynette understands what it's like to feel misunderstood or voiceless, so she purposely engages in crucial conversations with persons of all ages to allow them the freedom of embracing their true selves and identities. She's a positive speaker, a dream builder, author, self-love coach, award-winning sexuality awareness educator, counselor. Welcome to the show, Miss Lynette Medley.
Woo. Thanks for having me. Woo. I'm excited to be here.
Wow, fantastic. Now, that behavioral health thing, now it's starting to make sense why you're going down the path that you're going down, you know. That's my background, behavioral health, you know. And so, you know, when you talk about just understanding the people and understanding the why, that's always the big thing, the why, right? Yes. People do what they do, but you want to know why, right? Definitely. And so let's talk a little bit about, you know, your travels and, you know, your education and why did you select certain, you know, platforms and, you know, the background.
Okay, so my travels, I guess, growing up in a truly religious background, I think.
Hold on, real quick. I hate to cut you off, but just real quick, I see that you voted. Where did you get that sticker from? Well, that I voted sticker is hot. I think.
Well, I live in Delaware.
Okay.
My offices are in Philly. I'm a Philly girl. I just relocated to Delaware, but my offices are still in Philly. So have to, you vote where your
it
house
doesn't matter
is.
where you are.
There you go. Shout out
so
for
that's
you
where I
am.
am. So we were out there early voting.
Yeah.
So background. So I grew up in a religious background, and I just realized many times decisions I made were based on not understanding who I was as a true individual and my authenticity. As I tell people, when we don't create spaces and places for people to live authentically, we create sub-communities. And people look at me like, I said, you know the person you are when you're not around your mom, your church, your family. You know that person who you really are, who you are. Right. So I think that travel and my own experiences allowed me the opportunity to say, hey, I'm not going to be complicit like everybody else. Religion, behavioral health, mental health, all of them integrate into sexual health. And somehow we kind of leave that outside and leave it on the shelf and integrate it when a pathology or negative connotation comes apart. But I think that once we add it to the table as part of the meal, then we can address things holistically and actually feed people and nourish people in their entirety.
Fantastic. Now you have such a wealth of information in you. What is your actual title for everything that you do? Yeah.
There is no title. Yeah. I think what happens is that I've as I tell people, I've manifested this lane and kind of started owning it because there was no space to do this. So I guess the title is, most people usually call me a education and sex coach, an educator. And I started using educator instead of therapist. I dropped my therapist role a couple of years ago. About 2 years ago is when I took the therapist off because people, Black folk and people of color don't like to feel like they're going to therapy.
Why?
And the reason is, and I did therapy for many years. I've been a director of diversity and inclusion, director of outpatient services, all of those. But I realized that as a therapist, sometimes I would have conversations with people and bring things up and, want to add stuff to their goals and their treatment plans, but then I had no one to refer them to.
Right.
I had no one to really implement the procedures and steps that I was initiating as far as them, packing their suitcases for the journey. So I said, you know what? I need to be that person because they need to refer them to me because I know the action steps and I know how to walk alongside and help them unpack and pack their journey and unpack and pack their suitcase for their particular journey and not try to pack it and act like they're going on my journey and going to my destination.
Fantastic.
Right.
So before I unpack more of what you're doing, right? Let's talk a little bit about you. You made the statement that, Black people, they feel or they're kind of intimidated to seek out a therapist. Why do you think that is? Why do you think a lot of Black people have a problem with feeling that, I need to go to somebody to talk about the issues that I'm having or the mental challenges that I'm having when we don't have a problem calling our best friend and getting wrong information? Why do you think that is?
I think it's because it's so stigmatized in our community. If you talk about our theological underpinnings, when you're talking about our religion, pastors say we'll pray it away, take it to God, get on your knees. And then also our friends and everybody else, we don't want to seem like we're vulnerable. Let's just be honest. Black folk, we don't want to be vulnerable. We got to be strong. We got to have an S on our chest at all time. So once I go to therapy, that means I have a pathology. There's something wrong with me, something that needs to be fixed. And it's no way I'm going to tell my boy, anybody else, or my girlfriend, I'm broken, because I can't be broken and still be strong and still be that person
Even
that
that
I'm supposed to.
make me cringe.
Yeah. So I think what happens is once we take out the pathology of it and realize it's just behavioral things that need some additions or subtractions, I think words, take the sting out of therapy as a whole, that you're not broken, but you're a work in progress.
Right.
Like all of us, because all of us could probably use some degree of therapy, even though we might go to our friends or whatever, we need some help. So I think once we take the sting out of the word and destigmatize it, then we would be more open. But, we ain't trying to be broken folks, so we're not trying to go to therapy.
I know that's right. Now, I would contend that, and I'm sure this is debatable, but I would contend that more women of color would seek out therapists than men.
Definitely.
I think when men have this tendency of feeling that we have to be strong in the face of adversity and we don't want to see us broken.
Definitely.
Why do you think it's a huge disparity between men versus women, so to speak?
Well, I think especially when we're talking about men of color, you have to realize how in our society as a whole, we haven't really deemed men of color as masculine. So when you're talking about masculinity and what makes them be, in control or strong, they don't want to show any deficits. They already have issues with, monetary, jobs, all these other things. So they don't want to seem like they're not strong and don't have it under control because they're supposed to be the paramount strong pillar of the community and of society. So most of the times they don't necessarily want to go and say something's wrong with them. And guys just don't say, yo, boy, you need to go to therapy. No. What do we say? Let's go to the bar. Let's go hang out. Look, you just need to drink. Let's just be honest about it. So nobody wants to act like something's wrong with them. And then many times the behaviors that they're exemplifying are actually people they normalize it. So if they're, aggressive, oh, that's what guys do. Or they're acting this, oh, that's what they do. That's how they get it out. They drink, oh, that's okay. That's what they do. So as we normalize these behaviors, they kind of don't understand that there's something wrong with their behaviors. So they say, oh, I'm okay. Something's wrong with you for saying something's wrong with me.
Fantastic. Now, unpacking more of you.
Okay.
Right? You mentioned sex therapists or sexual health.
Yes.
Right? Let's talk a little bit more of that and jump and let's dig deeper into that because that's
dig deeper.
Yes, because again, dig deep, right? And so when you even again going into like our communities, right? That's another thing we generally don't talk about too much. It's kind of like taboo. Well, let's delve more into that. Especially as it relates to the challenges that you're working with as it relates to us.
Well, the challenge that I have in our community as a whole is the myths and the stigmatizing and just really the hush, the no voice about it. Right. I think what happens is I like to tell people when I come and talk about it, I'm like, I talk about sexuality awareness, which is different than sex in and of itself. And they're like, well, what's the difference? Well, sex is an action. You have to be doing something. Sexuality awareness is your belief about yourself, your integration with the world around you, and how the world integrates and sees you. That encompasses sex, reproductive health, STI prevention, and all that, but it is not that in isolation. So I think what happens is how we feel about ourselves and how we believe we integrate with the world and the world sees us dictates every behavior. And that is how we choose healthier decisions and more conscious relationships. People who come to my office most of the time are just, normal people who are going about their lives. And then they come to the realization that, hey, I'm not living a life based on who I am. I'm living a life based on what someone else has put on me. And that could be having sex with multiple people. It can be staying in an unhealthy relationship. All of these underpinnings come from our perception of self. So when I bring it to the table, it's like, okay, I'm talking about sexual health and wellness in its totality, but also incorporating sexuality awareness. So I'm building better people so that they can be who they are outside of anybody else agreeing with the decisions that they make.
Right. Now, when we talk about, because you mentioned how we perceive ourselves, right? But I just give a little push in that how we perceive ourselves is how others have imprinted that on us. Now that's the way we think because they've been saying or feeling that this is how we are. So how do we combat that, or how do we work through those weeds?
I think that's the beginning, is the realization that what we perceive ourselves to be many times is based on outward affirmations and outward regards. Once we realize that, when we look in the mirror and start labeling, because I'll have somebody say, what are the positive things about you and what are the negative things? Okay, most of the negative things aren't things we thought about ourselves. Most of the times those are things that have landed on us and we've internalized it. So it's really changing the mindset around to tell people, as people say things and think things, they can land on us, but they don't have to internalize us. You have to start letting them roll off of you. And you have to start unpeeling the layers and realizing, why do you have these thoughts about yourself? I think that's the hardest thing that most of us have, is to realize that, we actually set the bar for beauty. We set the bar for acceptance. We do it on our own, but we allow other people to infiltrate us and make us feel less about ourselves. That's how we make poor choices, poor decisions, and choose unhealthy relationships.
Fantastic. So how do we define sexuality versus sexual, like how we feel about ourselves sexually? How do we define the two?
You mean like our sexual orientation, like what we're attracted to, or our gender identity?
Both.
Okay, so our gender identity is basically how we feel as far as how male, female we are. Basically, if we feel as though we're more masculine or feminine, that's more about our gender identity. Our sexual orientation is who we're attracted to, what we like, love, or we have emotions towards. So that's our sexual orientation. And most times when I come and I'm talking about I'm a sexuality awareness organization or sexual health, people automatically go into LGBT, which is gender identity and sexual orientation. That's one part of it, because that's the concept of how people perceive and how they choose their relationships. But a larger part of what I do is I intersect conversations around sexual health and wellness into every other aspect of our life. May it be behavioral health, may it be religious, may it be mental health or physical health. I bring those conversations in because you cannot treat someone if you're not treating them in a holistic manner. So if I'm coming to the physician and you're asking me, are you sexually active? And I'm like, no. And you're giving me stuff based on what you perceive that I'm doing or the actions that I'm telling you. And then you come and tell me, oh, Ms. Lynette, I didn't tell them that I was sexually active because I'm not having intercourse. That's not what I'm doing. So language is key. So even when you're going to physicians and they're just assuming based on how you present what your actions are, then you're not giving them true information. I think it's more about incorporating language, incorporating spaces, and incorporating discussions and conversations where we can truly be who we are and our authenticity, and actually express who and what we are so that we can get the true information.
Interesting. So let's talk about the actual act now.
Okay,
right?
sex.
Yes, let's talk about it, right?
Yes, let's talk about sex.
Because I let's talk about sex,
That
baby.
song
Right?
just popped in my
It's just popped in my. So let's talk about that, and because there's always, even in the product, and even what we do is something that we say is pre-production, is production, then it's post-production, right? It's always the act before, then it's something that happens, and then it's the afterwards, right? So I want to dig a little bit more into that. So we got the sex act, right? And then we have something before the sex act, right? And then we have the act, and then we have sometimes ramifications of those actions, right? So let's talk about those three right there. How we think about it, and go.
Okay, I think how we think about it is also, I think it's a conception that's conceived from what other people say.
Okay.
When we talk to most young people and you say, well, what messages have you got about sex?
Right.
Don't do it. It's nasty. You're
Right,
going
right.
to get pregnant. You're going to get an STI, all these type things. So I think most of the time it's more sex shaming. So if you really think about most of the messages that we've got, we've never really came down to breakfast and somebody said, hey, how was your sex life? Did you have a good orgasm last night?
Oh, God.
You know, like we haven't really
Awkward.
we haven't made a normalized conversation around sex. Sex should be talked about in a way that sex is pleasurable. It's a pleasurable experience as long as what? Consent is on the table.
Right,
as long as consent is involved, then sex is a pleasurable and natural experience. So I think what happens is once we take away the negative aspect around sex, then it'll be more pleasurable and we'll be able to talk about it in a more comprehensive dialogue. But right now what we do is we'll think about it. We'll hem and haw. Sometimes it's like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Oh, maybe I shouldn't do it or whatever. Sometimes we have, inhibitions about it. Then we have sex. Sometimes, it's pleasurable, not pleasurable. Right. But the key is the conversations afterwards. Right. If it is pleasurable, do we talk about it? And if it's not pleasurable, do we truly talk about it to the person who we're having it with, or we talk about it to someone else? And that's a conversation. And I laugh because I do ladies groups and I do men's groups. Right. People lie. They lie. They lie. So when we lie and we aren't authentic again around conversations, then we make choices based on lies. So the world, will be like, well, you know what? I ain't feel like I should have told them. They should know. No, they're not going to know because everybody's body is different. Or the male might say, oh, well, I was doing all that and I did. And they know they didn't. Right. But how do we really have these authentic conversations when it's such a taboo and stigmatized topic?
Wow. Speaking of taboo and stigmatized, right? Let's talk a little bit about as a result of an action that you're now, because statistically when we talk about like even the AIDS epidemic and just contracting diseases, certain diseases within the African American community, let's talk a little bit more about that, because these are numbers. Every time I hear about or another report about the numbers, they're going higher and higher and higher. They're climbing. And not only that, just not too long ago, you wouldn't even have heard about syphilis. Now I'm hearing about syphilis like the heroin epidemic now. So what's going on out there that is the scale or the numbers that people are contracting these things are jumping and raising? Not new diseases. I'm sure it's new and diseases that's kind of like merging, but you have old diseases that's now circulating and coming back. What's going on?
We're in a highly sexualized community and environment. Sex is everywhere. Right. It's on the internet. It's social media. It's on every poster you hear, everything. But the conversations around sex and safe sex and making safer the choice, if you really look at it, you don't need to see advertisements around HIV and AIDS like you used to all over the place, because funding has been cut because it's not affecting the same communities anymore. So if you think about it, it's hitting heterosexual people, and the rise is going in heterosexual people more so than the so-called homosexual, as they used to say, community. So why is rising in the heterosexual community is because people still have sub-communities. People are engaging in actions and activities that they are not bringing to the upper community. And I'm not even saying people having sex with the same partners. Right. I'm just talking about people having sex and not really discussing it with people so that they basically take the right precautions about it. Again, if we keep stigmatizing, silencing, and keeping sex a secret and not bringing it out to the open communication and conversation, they're going to continue to rise. Remember, right now, our young people are at an age of instantaneous access. It's an app to go get whatever you want. You can act like you're going to the poppy store and you can go get a poppy, okay, for what I'm saying. You can go you can put it on your app within a 5-minute, I ain't even gonna say 5-mile radius, 5 minutes away, put it in their phone, go meet somebody and act like they went to the store and came back. So we're not integrating realistic conversations around sex and sexuality and access. Back in the day, young people had to go get magazines, get videotapes. Right now, they can look at it all day. But no one's bringing that conversation in and saying, hey, we need to address this in a whole different manner. This is like in their face, and they're engaging in these activities, and everybody is like, oh, well, we don't want to talk about that. That's one of the problems. Also, marriages are not what they used to be. People are going outside of marriages, having sex because it's like, that's what everybody is saying is acceptable. Everybody has open relationships. Think of all the stars. Everybody has open relationships. So they're like, hey, if I have permission or not, I'm going to do it. We're not engaging in authentic conversations around sex and sexuality. So all of these things are rising. Syphilis is rising. HIV is rising. Everything is because people aren't using protection anymore. People got this, when I talk to young people, they're like, oh, I can look at them and tell. No, you can't. I mean, I can, and that's that's the misconceptions. How many guys or how many girls, you be like, oh, I can know. I can tell. No, you can't. You better go get a blood test with them. I mean, but people have this perception that they know what AIDS or HIV or syphilis or the person who's sleeping with. No, I could have slept with 27 people and be looking just as fine tomorrow and with my church hat on, but you wouldn't know.
Wow, unbelievable, man, unbelievable. So wow, it's so much, and the
time
flies, and so you're such a powerhouse on the mic, and you got bars. Definitely bars, right?
That's
and so
education.
I know that's the education behind you. So let me just try I'm gonna try to get a few more questions in there before I have to let you go. So let's talk. So now we spoke about the during the act and the post. How do we talk about not necessarily preventative measures, but what indicates that you do contract something? Like how now? I mean, you used to be that if you had AIDS, it was a death sentence pretty much, now people look at people like Magic Johnson and, it's like he never had anything at all.
Definitely.
So what are the things that if somebody do, like all of our viewers and people who's listening, what are some of the things that if they do, contract some of these diseases, like how can they, either rehabilitate or get cleared up or fix or get rid of,
Well, I think one of the main things is that people need to go to the doctor regularly and get blood tests and be honest about their sexual activity. Right. When you go to the doctors, you know how they ask that little question, have you been sexually active? How many partners? And we all be like, one.
I don't even have sex.
I don't even have sex. And then they do it with the moms and or the husbands or wives. Only them. So they ask those questions because they run your blood test based on what you give them, the information. So sometimes you have to be like, can I talk to you for a minute by yourself about, just some things I'm feeling? Don't necessarily have to say what it's about and say, hey, because then you can say, I need the full gamut, because they won't run every test unless you have markers to indicate your behaviors. So that's why I tell people normally you need to go get your blood test and say, I need all of these tests run, because they only do a couple and they won't just run an HIV test unless you ask for it. Also, one of the things is out there when you're talking about exposure, and it's so funny. The person who referred me to kind of come and have this conversation, she works at the health department. So we were talking about PrEP, and people are like, what is PrEP?
Yeah, what is PrEP?
And I'm like, people don't know what PrEP is. It's been out for years. So it's pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's a medication that's out that people can take daily. And they actually started at Children's Hospital for ages 13 to something now. For people who are having sex with people who are at a high rate of having HIV or already have HIV. So if you are having anal, can I say?
Yeah.
Okay. If you're having
You're
anal,
teaching, so it's okay.
Anal sex or somebody who is using injectable drugs or have a high risk of this behavior, then you can get this pill, which is PrEP. And they've been giving it out to adults for years. And it's funny when I talk to our community, people are like, oh, I never heard of it. And that's when I'm talking about integrating that conversation around sexual health and wellness, which I realize it has to be somebody like me to come our community and talk. Because the people who they were sending, they just weren't saying in a way that people would receive it.
Absolutely.
And you have to kind of, know our neighborhood to be able to have the right conversation. And then there's PEP. Post-exposure prophylaxis. So back in the day, did you ever hear when people got stuck with needles or Madim, and they used to go to the hospital and take this pill? So within 72 hours, they can give you that medication, and that can combat. It's not 100%. Now, the PrEP, if taken the way it's supposed to be, is 90% effective. PEP, it depends on a lot of different variables. It's not as potent or whatever, but you can take that afterwards. So that's another thing that's out there that's in the community. You can get it. Our insurance pays for it or whatever. So that's what I'm talking about, things that, so when parents send their children to my offices for, services and whatever, I always tell them about that when certain behaviors are expressed, or when they're saying, oh, well, they're sneaking out or they're doing this and, they're, fluid and stuff. I say, well, have you ever went to Children's Hospital or this place in the community and heard about PrEP? So these are the conversations that every teacher, every therapist, and anybody who works with teens should know about. But they won't know unless they integrate conversations around sexual health and wellness and sexuality awareness.
So we have, it's only like 4 more minutes left. This is crazy. We're going to have to bring you back. You promise to come back?
Yes, I promise to come back.
Right, so
I like to talk.
I got this one question. I can tell. Me too. We all like to talk. We talk weekly. You get it?
We talk weekly. All right now.
So before I let you go, you have to tell us, because I know the Sizzle and Classy Lady Sparkle, they have like teens.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And how do you have that uncomfortable conversation with your teen about having sex?
Okay, and it is uncomfortable, but what I tell people is that many times you can have the conversation, but you might not get the responses that are as authentic as they can be. So just like with anything else, parents can only do but so much and have those conversations. But I think what happens is you have to leave an open-ended conversation where be able to receive whatever it is they say. Because once you hush, shun, or judge them, they're not going to talk to you again. You can't say, oh, you don't do that. Oh, nobody does that. Whatever. They're going to say, okay, I don't. And they're going to keep doing it. And that's why No More Secrets has these crucial conversations. We even have an engagement called Cupcakes and Crucial Conversations, where we have conversations with parents and young people, and we have like all types of get together. It could be a pajama party. It could be at the office, and we have cupcakes and we have these conversations, because what you have to realize is adults don't know all the answers either. Because you have to remember that even though you might know how to fix a leak, you're not a plumber. So if my background is in human sexuality, that's what I study and I research. So we have these open conversations.
So go ahead, tell everybody, all our viewers, from podcasters listening to everything, tell them how they can get in contact with you, ask you some more questions.
Okay, you can get in contact with me at nomoresecretsmbs.org. NoMoreSecretsMBS.org. You can call me. I answer all calls. I answer crisis and emergency. And if you just have a question, 215-485-7881. And we are located right in Philadelphia at 705658 Germantown Avenue, Suite 205. And you can contact us, like I said, on the web at No More Secrets MBS. It's for Mind, Body, Spirit. MBS.org. Anytime. Please hit us up.
That's what's up. Shout out to your wingman or wingwoman.
That's my executive director.
There you go. Shout out to the executive director. Y'all keep doing what y'all doing. We love y'all for that. You know what I'm saying? Anything to help the people, man. Anything to help the people. It's your boy Charles Gregory with the beautiful
LaurenSizzle
and the beautiful
Classy Ladies.
And you're listening to WPPM LP Philadelphia 106.5 FM. We talk weeklies after the talk. And unfortunately, we got to go. So we talk weekly after the talk is on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, and Spreaker. Make sure you follow us on iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Spotify. Binge listen to our shows. Like and follow us on We Talk Weekly's Facebook page. And download the little tune in at. Look forward to WPPM LP 106.5 FM and tune in every Tuesday at 7 p.m. We Talk Weeklies after the talk. And follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at We Talk Weekly, at Charles Greg, at Lauren_Sizzle, at Sparkle Price This One. And subscribe to our We Talk Weekly YouTube channel. And if you're in Philly, catch us every Monday night, 9:30 on Comcast 66, Verizon Fios 29 and 30. And shout out to Afro Philly. That's right. MBG Network We Talk Weekly is syndicated. You can find us in Atlanta, Baltimore, Birmingham, Chicago, Delaware, Houston, Jacksonville, Los Angeles, Miami, Newark, New Jersey, New York City, Philadelphia, and all across the nation. And guess who you look for?
We Talk Weekly.
Oh, that was a tongue twister, but we gotta go. We love you, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you keep watching and following us. And we out here like last year. Hello.
Peace.